warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Cairo Local Time, our program that brings you all the latest news, events and happenings from inside Egypt. My name is Angie Meher and I'll be joining you for the next hour or so for today's edition. Of course, we have a lot in store for you, and today we'll be later on joined in the studio by our guest, where we'll be reviewing, of course, the recent Africa Forum 2018 that was held earlier this week in Sharm el-Sheikh, of course, under the auspices and in attendance of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. That is our main topic for discussion. But of course, before we get into all of that, we take a short break and we'll be right back to take a look at all the news making the headlines. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and starting with a look at the news, the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli inaugurated on Tuesday the Intra-African Trade Fair held in Egypt between the 11th and 17th of December. The IATF is the first of its kind, a trade fair in Africa, focusing on only African trade, promotional strategies to support and encourage the production of goods and services. We have more details in this report.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli inaugurated on Tuesday the Intra-African Trade Fair held in Egypt between the 11th and 17th of December. Addressing the opening session, Madbouli said that the fair is an important step toward the African economic integration. He noted that the fair gains special importance in the light of major progress made in the negotiations of the African Free Trade Deal, which will be implemented soon. Minister of Trade and Industry, Amr Nassar, said that 1,155 African companies are taking part in the fair, including 300 Egyptian companies and 34 national pavilions. Nassar said that the IATF is the first of its kind trade fair in Africa, focusing on African trade promotion strategy to support and encourage the production of goods and services. The minister also said that this will increase the participation in the regional trade, seek competence building to expand production capacities, and provide a platform which offers goods and services, as well as exchange information on trade and investment. It also provides opportunities to exchange businesses with the aim of increasing the intra-African trade. The minister noted that the number of trade deals will be planned among the participating companies. Nassar added that the fair focuses on a number of sectors, including agriculture products, building materials, tourism, medical and pharmaceutical products, heavy industries, energy, textiles, clothing, and the energy industry. Nassar added also that the fair will include organizing a national day for each country to showcase its potential and culture, serving as an example for the continent. The day is divided into two main sections, arts and entertainment performances, along with the folklore, and the second section is dedicated to showcasing the vision of African ministers for trade, economic and tourism opportunities.
And to continue with more news, Minister of Immigration Nabila Makram said that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will attach special importance to women's role in Africa after assuming the African Union presidency in 2019. Addressing a session on political empowerment of women in Africa held on the Fringe of Africa 2018 Forum, the minister said Egypt has witnessed big changes in the political, economic and social aspects of life. She said women are heading 8 portfolios in the Egyptian government, citing the ministries of investment, environment, tourism, health, planning, immigration and culture, which she described as very critical files. She also highlighted that Egyptian women's representation in parliament, which exceeded 30% of the parliament seats. She also pointed out the role of women in Egypt's political life over the past few years and high turnout during all elections. And to continue with more news, Egypt's annual consumer price inflation slipped to 15.6% in November 2018. The Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics, CAPMAS, attributed the decrease in inflation on a monthly basis to a decline of some food commodity prices. More details in this story.
Egypt's annual consumer price inflation slipped to 15.6% in November 2018 compared to 26.7% in the same month of 2017, that rose due to the liberalization of the Egyptian currency. State statistics body said that in October, Egypt's annual consumer price inflation recorded 17.5% compared to 31.8% in the same month of 2017. The Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics CAPMAS said that on a monthly basis, inflation decreased 0.7% in November compared to the previous month to record 309.1 points. CAPMAS attributed the decrease in inflation on a monthly basis to the decline of some food commodities prices such as vegetables and fruits. Inflation surged in Egypt since the liberalization of the Egyptian pound in November 2016, reaching a high record level in July due to energy subsidy cuts and gradually easing since July. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) expected Egypt's inflation to decline to 20.9% in 2018 compared to 23.5% in 2017, anticipating it to reach 14% in 2019 and 7% in 2023. Meanwhile, the World Bank said that headline inflation remained at high level of 21.6% during 2017-18, but started to recede significantly by the end of the year, adding that core inflation returned to single digit in July 2018. The World Bank clarified that the increase of energy prices caused a temporary rise in headline inflation to 14% on an average during June to August. Egypt targets an inflation rate of 13% in its fiscal year 2018-19 budget.
The Minister of Planning and Administrative Reform, Hala Said, said that exports are vital for the Egyptian economy, adding that the government is seeking to increase annual exports by 15 to 20%. The minister's remarks were made during her meeting with the Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, Tariq Amir, the Council of Governors of the Islamic Development Bank. The talks covered bolstering cooperation between the Egyptian government and the Islamic Development Bank. The minister asserted the need for expanding the base of foreign currency, adding that a group of sectors are leading the Egyptian economy, such as industry, agriculture, communication, as well as construction. To more news, the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, Tariq Al-Mullah, said that the first international bid for exploration in the Red Sea is scheduled to be announced before the end of 2018. Addressing the second energy conference, he said oil sector has seen a lot of success in the period between 2014 and 2018. The details.
Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources Tariq Al-Mullah said that the first international bid for exploration in Red Sea is scheduled to be announced before the end of 2018. Mullah explained during his speech at the second energy conference on Monday that the GU reserve database on natural resources in the Red Sea was completed in preparation for the bidding. Al-Mullah added that the oil sector has seen a lot of success in the period between 2014 and 18 as 63 new oil agreements with investments of about $14 billion have been signed. He noted that the two largest projects on collecting geophysical data on the Red Sea and southern Egypt have been conducted, and debts to foreign companies have been reduced to less than a third to reach $2.1 billion by the end of June 2018, the lowest value since 2010. During the same period, 24 projects had been established for the development of gas fields, including the Norris, Northern Alexandria, Atoll, and Zohr fields, which contributed to increasing natural gas production by 60% compared to 2015-16. The four fields also contributed to achieving Egypt's self-sufficiency in natural gas by the end of September 2018. According to Al-Mullah, the sufficiency of refineries has been upgraded, infrastructure projects have been expanded, and 3 projects with a total investment of $4 billion were implemented in the field of petrochemicals, adding that 4 other projects are planned within the next 4 years. Al-Mullah said that between 2014 and 18, natural gas supplied reached 1.6 million units. A comprehensive reform program for energy subsidies and rationalization of consumption was implemented, along with a program for the development of human resources in the oil sector. The minister said that the government committee has been formed to study the transformation of Egypt into a regional energy center, in addition to preparing a law to regulate the gas market to allow the private sector to compete within the Egyptian gas market.
And for more news, the Suez Canal Economic Zone and the Saudi Industrial Services Company signed a contract on establishing a multi-purpose international terminal for East Port Said Port. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended the signing ceremony. The contract covers the terminal's design, establishment, management and operation with an expected investment cost of 1.5 billion Egyptian pounds. Suez Canal Economic Zone Head Vice Admiral Moheb Mamish said the project provides 3,300 direct and indirect jobs in all disciplines within the logistics field. He added that its revenues range from 13 to 20 billion Egyptian pounds. Continuing with more news, the EU supports utilizing innovation, a major driver of competitiveness to enable Egyptian industrial companies to position themselves better and reach export markets through funding the Engineering Export Council of Egypt, the EEC. The EEC has taken an initiative to qualify Egyptian engineering companies to export to the European market through its project enabling Egyptian exports by technology transfer-driven products innovation. The details.
The European Union launched an initiative to increase Egyptian export through financing a new project launched by the Engineering Export Council. The initiative aims to rehabilitate Egyptian companies in this important sector in order to reach European markets by focusing on product innovation and development. The initiative announced during the conference enabling Egyptian export by technology transfer-driven product innovation held in Cairo on Monday. The Egypt Export Through Production Innovation project is funded by the EU and implemented by the Engineering Export Council with the aim of qualifying Egyptian engineering companies to enter the European market through technology transfer. The European Union has allocated a grant of 950,000 euros to the project, which is being implemented over an 18-month period. The EU-funded project aims to assist Egyptian companies in the export stages to Europe by building the capacity to innovate and develop their products according to the needs of the European market. To achieve this aim, the project will assess the European market's needs and identify concrete export opportunities for the Egyptian products. The project endeavors to be a success story in bringing Egyptian products much closer to a sustained international presence through the innovation and product adaptation. Companies will then be supported in developing business and product concepts and marketing these products in the European market through business matchmaking with European partners.
To continue with more news, the Minister of Health and Population, Hala Zaid, reported that the ministry has screened 15.5 million people as part of the presidential initiative that is called 100 Million Healthy Lives, aiming to eliminate hepatitis C and provide early detection of the virus alongside diabetes and obesity. The Health Ministry spokesperson said the initiative Central Committee received the Ministry of Youth and Sport senior officers discussing cooperation between the two ministries in organizing sports marathons and urging civilians to participate in the virus detection campaign. He added that the ministry has trained a 30-person medical team, including physicians, pharmacists, administrative staff, and data entry specialists in the National Training Institute to work on this campaign. The screening campaign for hepatitis C began earlier this year, targeting people aged 19 to 59 for scanning through PCR tests. Those testing positive for the disease are expected to undergo further checkups and will provide free medication. For more news, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, Mustafa Waziri, visited the site where parts of the King Ramses II statue are being assembled to return the statue to its original place at the Temple of Luqsor. Waziri said the assembly work will be executed in cooperation with the Chicago House team. The King Ramses II statue parts will be assembled, restored and reinstalled in its original place in the Temple of Luqsor to be the 5th statue of King Ramses II at the temple. He also pointed out the Ministry of Antiquities, Khaled Anani, has planned the completion of all the maintenance work by April of next year to unveil the statue in time with the celebration of World Heritage Day. And still with more news related to Egyptian antiquities, the Minister of Antiquities, Khaled Al-Anani, has said that the new Grand Egyptian Museum, or GEM, is set to be officially inaugurated in 2020, saying the ministry has strict directives from the country's political leadership for the opening to be held in that year. He said that entrance tickets are to be priced at £5 for Egyptian students, £10 for a public ticket, and free for students from all schools. The minister gave statements during a meeting of the Egyptian Parliament's Culture, Media and Antiquities Committee on Sunday. Al-Anani announced the terms and conditions booklet will be ready soon for the Emirati company and international consortiums that have said they are bidding to administer the facility. The GEM complex is located on an area of approximately 500,000 square meters, adjacent to the pyramids of Giza, and it is one of the largest museums in the world, displaying the heritage of a single civilization. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up all the news making the headlines for today's episode of Cairo Local Time. But now we leave you with some more light news this time, as well as our feature of snapshots. And we'll be right back to begin our interview with our guest here in the studio. Stay tuned. A musical band presented a song called Ghazal from the Egyptian folklore, performed previously by the Rida Band. In the second half of the 70s, the musical center in Egypt was on a date with a strange surprise. The Andalusian Mushaz returned to the scene after a long disappearance. Perhaps the last one to present this particular type of music was the late artist Kamel Khalili. After his death in 1931, no one presented this kind of art until Fouad Abdelmajid came along. Fouad Abdelmajid is an Egyptian poet, musician and singer who was born on May 14th in 1926. He graduated from the Faculty of Agriculture. But before talking about the march of Fouad Abdelmajid, this is what was the Andalusian form of art and poetry. Some believe that its origin is old and the word is derived from the word mochta, which means hymn or rhythm. The Rida Band was an Egyptian theatre group that started in the late 1950s under the leadership of Mahmoud Rida and presented performances that had lots of approval. It was considered the first special group of folk arts. The artist Mahmoud Rida considered the formation of the first special folkloric ensemble in partnership with the first dancer, design and composer Ali Rida and the first dancer Farida Fahmi. Mahmoud Rida designed the dances that he inspired from the arts of the countryside, coasts, highlands and wilderness. In 1962, the band's performances moved to the Metropole Theatre, where it had a special approach and distinctive feature in Oriental dance performances. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're still with you on today's edition of Cairo Local Time. And as promised earlier today, we discuss the Africa 2018 Forum that was just recently held in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh, of course, under the auspices and in attendance of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon in the studio by my guest, who's just also come back from attending the Africa 2018 Forum, Mr. Smih Wahid Adli, a businessman. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much
and
for
coming in
having
this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So you attended the Africa 2018 Forum, the COMESA, that was held in Sharm el-Sheikh. Tell me a bit about your participation.
Well, we participated among the group of businessmen who joined this this forum to explore more the development and the opportunities that can arise in Africa for Egyptian companies, because a lot of talk was happening there for this specific purpose. The first day of the forum was dedicated for the youth, the Young Entrepreneur Day, and Women Empowerment Day. But the second day was more geared towards leadership and the collaboration between Egypt and the different African countries. It was very important for us to attend as a company or a business, and it was also very inspiring. The first day I found it very inspiring to meet all these younger people with a lot of ideas and thinking out of the box, and a lot of sessions were going on. There was really this inspiring atmosphere in the air, and I found this, you know, moving into the digital age and all sorts of things. This was very important.
Tell me, Mr. Smih, how important are such forums for really integration when it comes to different businesses from different backgrounds, different countries? As you know, Egypt is going to be heading the African Union next year. It will be under the leadership of Egypt, how important is it to hold such forums in Egypt in order to allow open opportunities for countries within the African continent?
The main underlying theme of the entire forum was this, actually, that Egypt is an integral part of Africa, and that Egypt and the Egyptian leadership, as President Sisi spoke and was very clear on that, Egypt is committed to the development of the continent. I want even to say that Egypt is now in the position to lead sort of this development.
Yes.
So it was really important to prove or to assert the fact that Egypt is an integral part of Africa, that all of the countries will collaborate in development and development issues, and a lot of these issues were actually discussed.
Yes.
So during the second session, actually, of the second day on leadership and collaboration, there was head figures from the donor banks and the donor agencies like the IFC from the IMF, the African Development Bank, the Afrexim Bank. So, and there was a lot of talk about how can we develop the atmosphere for development, and what would be the role of Egypt, especially, as you said, being a leader, being a leader of the African, being the leader of the Union of, for Africa for the 2019. So it was really important, and a lot of issues regarding the development were discussed.
Development, when we speak about development, we can't move far away from the issue of sustainable development. Sustainable development in Africa is very important because Africa throughout history has been looted. Its raw materials have been taken. So there hasn't been a push for sustainable development when it comes to African countries. How much was this discussed during the forum?
It was discussed in length, and there was, I don't want to say a debate, but there was a little bit of debate, because the point of view that most of the people adopted was that as sustainable development has to be built on two pillars, really. These two pillars are education, on one hand, because, and I would like to elaborate here a little bit, because now Africa is 1.2 billion people. In 2040 and all the way to 2050, more than half of the working force in the world will be in Africa. So this is, as much as my people think it's a threat, it's an opportunity. With the right education and the right development of youth, this first pillar of education and youth development can be used for sustaining development. The second one, which is a more practical approach, is the infrastructure. And that was the main talk. And this was perhaps the main focus of President Sisi while he spoke, because he said, for any development to happen, we need infrastructure. Infrastructure as in roads, electricity, power generation, whether it's using old or renewable energy. So these are the two pillars, really, which is education and investment in youth, and infrastructure and investment in infrastructure. Only using these two, in the opinion of all the people who are there, can development be sustained.
Tell me, I'm sure you interacted with a lot of different nationalities and lots of African guests that were visiting Egypt. Tell me, how was their impression of Egypt? How keen are they when it comes to, for example, investing in Egypt or doing business with Egyptian business persons? Tell me a bit about that side of your attendance.
Yes, everyone I met a lot of people, actually, from different nationalities, whether from Rwanda, Mozambique, Nigeria, New Guinea, a lot of people from a lot of nationalities. I can just go on and on and on. But everyone was very positive towards working with Egypt and working with Egyptian companies. And before I get into the business side of it, everyone was really impressed with Sharm. Sharm is beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's very clean, very organized. The weather was nice. The event was very well organized. The venue was just, for me, I haven't been there before. It's my first year to attend. The venue was amazing. So the venue, the organization, everything was really spot on, as they say. So this right away generated positive energy.
Impact, yes.
Yes, and positive impact. So, and all the people are keen to work with Egyptian company, and I think perhaps this is the most important thing, is that there is a lot of countries, a lot of opportunities out there. All we need is to organize ourselves and collaborate. That's it.
In your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges, besides organization, that face such opportunities, as you say?
Well, it's, I think, and that was again an idea that there should be more platforms or more ways to get people together. So the African Forum is just one event that takes place once a year, but there is need for more. Doesn't have to be necessarily conference, doesn't have to be necessarily forums, but platforms of the sort, more digital transformation of the way to collaborate. I think this is the future really, is that how can people connect more, get to know where the opportunities are, what are the rules of investing in a certain countries. These are not readily available. They are more and more available, but still I think there is some effort that needs to be done.
Right, so Mr. Samiḥ, now President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi also announced the creation of an investment fund in the information technology infrastructure in Africa based on some of the most up-to-date technological systems. Do you think how much is such a system needed in the African continent, and what could be the advantages of establishing such a system, in your opinion?
Well, such a system is crucial. It's crucial for the entire process to go on. The main, again, this was the main themes, is to connect.
Yes.
And without such a system, there is no connection. And without connection, there will be no collaboration and no development and so forth. So an infrastructure to connect, because a lot of the countries, including Egypt, by the way, of the African countries, including Egypt, they lack still the proper connection infrastructure for connectivity as the more developed countries like Europe and the States.
I always hear stories through several interviews, for example, that we can export specific fruit, for example, or vegetable, or import specific fruits and vegetables from different African countries, but because of the lack of transport infrastructure, it would cost triple what it costs to get it from Europe, for example. Yes. So these are some of the examples that hinder intertrade between African countries.
Africa is 55 countries. A lot of them, unfortunately, are landlocked. So road transportation, in addition to maritime transportation for the countries that have access to ports and so forth, are again very important. But the thing is that there is no infrastructure, adequate infrastructure, I mean when it comes to roads and ports, for such a trade to take place. Again, this is very important, and it has to be developed, of course.
Of course.
In addition to the what we said is the infrastructure for connectivity.
Yes, COMESA also called for opening negotiations with international institutions to complete the very old, very well-known Cape to Cairo road. This has been a project, I think, since years ago, Cape to Cairo, and how to connect Cape to Cairo. Yeah. How feasible is this, in your opinion, now with more collaboration, more meetings like what was held here in Egypt? How feasible is this Cape to Cairo road in actually materializing from Cape to Cairo?
Well, you touched on a very important point. I was talking to some of the people I was talking to from Africa. They were talking about, it was in French, what they called l'axe, which is the axis, the main axis of Africa. And they think it's very feasible. And this road from Cairo to Cape Town is not just a road. It will be a road, railway, a main line for high voltage transmission. So it is really an axe of service that goes all the way from Cairo to Cape Town, and then it can branch out. And this again goes to the point of connectivity, where we can connect everything together through road, railways, electricity, grid, and of course infrastructure for connectivity, which is the internet.
Indeed. It's not only, of course, the issue of goods and products. I know you're a businessman,
Yeah.
but there's also the issue of services. Between African countries, there's also an import and export of services, whether it's expertise, whether it's, for example, there's lots of projects that Egypt has already done, like health practitioners, teaching staff. Was that an issue that was discussed amongst the kind of
Yes.
forum discussions?
Yes. Yes, of course, because when we go back to the issue of sustainable collaboration and sustainable development, the trading of goods is not key, or it is very important, but it's not key. It's the services really, and the knowledge transfer.
Yes.
So now, for example, Egypt is providing services for construction for perhaps one of the big projects is the dam in Tanzania, for example. This being built by Egyptians. So the transfer of services and knowledge, whether that in construction or in education or in IT, and moving back and forth, this is really very important, is getting know-how and exporting know-how at the meantime.
Not just services also, but COMESA countries agreed to cooperate with other African countries in the fields of governance and anti-corruption. A big challenge facing a lot of countries in the continent is the issue of security, stability, corruption, and there has been collaboration to exchange expertise when it comes to these important issues. How important is it, and how much was it highlighted during the discussions?
It was highlighted by the president while he was making his comments after that the donor agencies spoke. He said that while we talk about how much time will it take to get the funds for investment in infrastructure, we also need to think about governance and fighting corruption and fighting terrorism.
Yes.
So stability and political stability, again, is one of the key factors in the equation for development. And of course, there was a lot of talk about governance and anti-corruption. I think this is the first step, really. This is the first step that should be taken in order to make all the foreign investors feel they would have more feeling of trust and they would be more willing to provide the funds.
Foreign investors usually look at Africa as a source of raw material, and that's it, a good source of cheap raw material, cheap labor, etc. Is there a move to somehow change this perception that it's no longer just a place where you can get your raw materials cheaply and move along, produce them and then resell them? Is there a more holistic approach to investment in Africa now, in your opinion?
I want to take this one, if you allow me, I want to take this one step further. As it was discussed, the solution to all African problems is not with foreign investments. And I think if we wait for foreign investments to come and give us the necessary funds to make the development, the time will be lost. The solution for the investment lies within the hands of Africa. So inter-African investment is the more important issue to be discussed here. And this is what was really highlighted and discussed, is that we should invest in each other first. And then everybody would come and invest.
Indeed.
When you start the motion and you start to be successful, everyone wants to come on board. So I think this what should happen is that first we start with inter-African investment, inter-African collaboration, inter-African trading, as was highlighted in the recent African trade agreement that should come in force in March 2019. And then we rely on foreign investments. But of course, as to go back and to answer your question, yes, now is the time to put more value into our raw material.
Indeed.
And not just make the investment, any investment that doesn't add value, I think should not be accepted by the country to which the investment is going to.
Free trade agreements. We've heard a lot about different free trade agreements, and then something happens and the free trade agreement doesn't go through, or it's not really implemented. Yet I know that a lot of African countries, over 30-something African countries, have signed free trade.
44.
44.
44 countries.
That's the latest figure. 44 countries have signed the free trade agreement, but no free trade is really happening. Unless they share borders. That's all.
Well, they signed it in Nouakchott some time ago. I don't know the exact date, but 44 countries signed. What is needed for now is 22 countries to first ratify the agreement, and this will happen because there are already 22 countries that agreed to it and ratified it. And starting from March, I think everyone will come on board. So we are hoping
for implementation.
For implementation,
Indeed.
starting March.
I'm afraid we've run out of time very, very quickly. Mr. Samiح, Wahid, Adli, Egyptian businessman. I'd like to thank you very, very much, sir.
Thank you very much
for joining
having
us.
me.
Thank you very much. With that, ladies and
appreciate it.
gentlemen, we wrap up today's edition of Cairo Local Time. We do hope you have enjoyed it. Many thanks for watching. Thank you very much.
Merci. Thank you.